Hi there, in this video I'm going to talk you through my image making top tips. I've found these really useful over the years, so I thought I'd share them here with you. Simplify. Usually less is more, and the simple option is the better one. Simple and clear ideas and images communicate better. I'm always overcomplicating things, adding too much detail, so this is something that I'm always trying to remember, and it's true for simplifying your ideas, simplifying your compositions, your designs, how much detail you're adding, your skies, your characters. It's so broad and it's so useful. So yeah, try and remember to simplify. Do the hardest part first. The image will come together much quicker if you tackle the challenging element first. I always find that if I do, say for example in this image, the plane first, everything else kind of just happens so much quicker and it's so much easier because you've got that main element done and that hard thing's out of the way. Everything's just much quicker and you're kind of home and dry. So yeah, I'd always recommend starting with the thing that's you know is going to take you the longest and is going to be the most challenging for you. Depth. Can the viewer get lost in the image? How far back does it go? Creating depth is really important, and using the principles of things like atmospheric perspective, using the foreground and the background and the far background to make an image feel like it's 3D, it's not a flat plane, that will really help with the believability of your images. So always considering depth and how you can make the image feel more vast and expansive is a really important thing. Does it have a good silhouette? Anything and everything you're drawing deserves to have an interesting shape. If you reduce it to a silhouette, is the shape interesting and can you tell what it is? So any shape you're drawing, if you were to whack down the brightness so it was a complete silhouette, would that shape be engaging? Would you understand what it was, and would it be an interesting shape? So thinking about everything as how it would look as a silhouette and designing things so that they have interesting shapes is a really key thing for image making, and something I'm always trying to remember and going back through my images to make sure they're creating interesting shapes and that they're clearly readable against the background or what they're in front of. So frame things with light. Draw the viewer's eye to what's important by directing them there with light. So you can use light to emphasize the important things and shadow to hide things in an image. You can really draw the viewer's eye to the action or the most important key thing that's happening in the image by directing light into that area. So I'm always kind of thinking, where's the action? What do we need the viewer to see? And then how can we use light to illuminate that area and make that the most visually immediate thing in the image, and then the viewer can look around the image and see everything else, but you really want them to kind of be drawn to that thing first. So using light is a really key way to do that. So location, what can you tell the viewer about this place and what makes it unique? So doing a little bit of research, finding some reference imagery and kind of getting to know what the vegetation or the buildings or the topography, all of that kind of stuff, the clothing that people wear, all sorts of things will indicate where your image is set, or if it's a kind of made up location. Maybe you want to kind of tell the viewer things about that location that make it original and unique. Doing your research and putting those things in can really enhance an image and help you tell a story a little bit better. Thumbnails. If it doesn't read well small, it won't read well when it's big. So I find thumbnails super important for my process. I do them in my sketchbook, or I do them on Photoshop or in Procreate. But really the idea is just kind of testing things out and trying to get a composition that reads well small. So when I say reads well, I mean kind of, can the viewer tell what's going on? Are things balanced in a nice way that's kind of not completely symmetrical but a bit uneven and interesting? Does the composition lead the viewer to the action? And how might you use light to tell your story and lead the eye to the most important areas? So thumbnailing is such a great thing to do, and it's kind of, you know, it's your plan for the final image, so it's not to be overstated. If you can make it look good as a tiny little sketch, it will look good big. So posing, making the character tell the viewer what they're feeling, experiencing through their body language. So this is something that I'm always trying to remind myself to do in my images, because I feel like it's such a key thing that helps tell the story so well, and it's so easy to do really kind of standard uninteresting poses, and I'm really guilty of doing them all the time. So I'm always trying to remember to go back and think, okay, how can I make the pose better to tell a story about what that person is going through? And often I use silhouettes, but you can tell a lot by the pose, the body language, and as humans we kind of read that instantly. So yeah, posing's a really great thing to remember. So avoid evenness. Even symmetrical compositions are less engaging. So make compositions intentionally uneven. So when you're designing compositions, especially when you're thumbnailing, just remembering that you kind of want to avoid things that are too even or too kind of symmetrical. It's much more interesting to offset things or use different proportions of space. So maybe your character takes up more space on one side and there's more negative space somewhere else, but playing with that balance rather than having things kind of like completely even will kind of definitely help when you're creating images or composition sketches or however you're starting your images. Finally, it's done. So trust yourself to know when your image is finished. You can normally tell deep down that it's complete. I usually find that I start to feel good about the image and a bit more positive after having spent quite a long time pushing things around and things not working and kind of wrestling with color. And then finally it starts to come together and you feel like, oh, like this is getting to where I want it to be. It's usually a sign that you're almost there, and it's just that last few little tweaks. It's really hard to kind of stop and not just keep adding more and more detail. But usually I use that feeling of positivity or happiness with the image to be a kind of trigger to be like, okay, like we're almost there. And then I don't really want to go much further than that. So maybe it's the self-confidence to just to know that that's and it's done and you can move on to the next thing is really it's really useful. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found them useful, and yeah, see you in the next one. Thanks.